New York to talk about the FIFA scandal and the organization's future is Grant Wahl, Fox Sports television contributor. Thanks for joining us, Grant.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let me begin with Sepp Blatter and what he said today, clearly refusing to resign. He said, "I cannot monitor everyone all the time." Was that the right response at this particular moment?
Well, it's the expected response from Sepp Blatter. There's a FIFA presidential election tomorrow, and Blatter is expected to win another four-year term, which would be his fifth. So he's certainly not going to do anything right now that would rock the boat or that would accept any responsibility for what we've seen as far as the arrests this week of FIFA officials and the fact that the U.S. government at the highest levels is now saying that FIFA is a completely corrupt organization.
So where do we go from this point forward, Grant? What needs to happen tomorrow and moving forward?
Well, tomorrow in the presidential election, I expect that Sepp Blatter will win. I guess there's an outside chance that Prince Ali bin Al Hussein from Jordan might make a challenge, but I do not expect that. There is support for Sepp Blatter around the world. I think he has the votes. You have to consider who the voters are. They're people who aspire to be Sepp Blatter, who think that there's no reason to reform FIFA. These are soccer officials. Now, the bigger question for me is where do we go with this investigation by the U.S. FBI into FIFA and corruption in FIFA, and will the 14 arrests that were made this week, will any of those people turn and provide evidence that might implicate someone as high as Sepp Blatter?
Here's a question a lot of people are asking, Grant. The accusations, according to the Justice Department, rampant, systematic, deep-rooted corruption apparently spanning some 24 years. Why would it take more than 2 decades to bring about these charges?
Well, for the longest time, we've been wondering, will someone who actually causes fear in FIFA cause them to take notice and change? And to this point in time, until yesterday, really, nobody really has done that. FIFA's own sponsors haven't challenged them in any real meaningful way to reform. We haven't seen a situation like the Salt Lake City scandal that caused the International Olympic Committee to reform. That came from sponsors, that came from government pressure and the possibility of people going to jail. And so now we're seeing that possibility happen with FIFA, and we don't know exactly where this story may go from here, but it did take a long time because FIFA's own internal investigations were never useful because they never had subpoena power like these governmental investigations. They never turned up any smoking guns.
Grant, do you think there is a culture, perhaps in football, that corruption and greed is rampant in FIFA, and that's okay, and that's been accepted for all these years?
No, I think that's exactly what's happened here. That's exactly what the U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch said yesterday. This is a culture of corruption in FIFA that has been allowed to rot the organization all the way into the inside for decades now. And Sepp Blatter, as president, has presided over this era. Even if he's not paying bribes and accepting them himself, people who have put him in power certainly have.
Grant, what effect do you think these allegations, the scandal, will have on the sport of football? And how might fans react? This is a sport that is so passionately loved around the world.
Well, the fans don't really have any voice over who runs FIFA. It's just a very select club of almost entirely men, old men, powerful men who have been able to sort of run rampant inside this organization. And I would love to see for the game to become much more about the fans and FIFA to become much more responsive. That takes an entire institutional overhaul, potentially even blowing up FIFA, and that's what this Department of Justice investigation potentially could do.
All right, Grant Wahl, we certainly appreciate your time. Thank you very much.